If you have any sort of curiosity or calling to create content that you want people to stop scrolling and be interested in, then visual effects is a great way not only to capture attention, but to create an emotion. And that's what really creates shares, follows.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Coach Tribe podcast. As we already know by now, I kept bringing some formidable guests, some, as I like to call them, VIP guests. Today we have one more, and I am so happy we have him here today. He is Colin Pomeroy, and not Pomera, as I've been told. And he has over almost 130k followers on Instagram. He's a visual effects expert, and he has lots of learnings for us today on visual effects, how to implement those into reels to get more reach, which will ultimately grow our Instagram accounts or TikTok accounts, which would ideally convert into sales at the end of the day. So without further ado, Colin, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Wow. Thank you. What an intro. What an intro. Great job. Great job.
I felt inspired. I was telling to Colin just before, and I'm going to share it for the first time ever with all of you right now, that before some of this podcast episodes, one of my go-to songs to, get the energy levels up is Pump It or Boom Boom Pow by Black Eyed Peas. So there you go. The secret is
Yeah.
out in the world, Colin.
That's
How
right.
are you
Yeah, you
today?
should have that song be the intro to the podcast. I don't know if you guys have like a jingle or something, but
We do. I'm
just a
curious
thought.
about copyrights, but I'm going to have a look into that.
Yeah. Or
Gotcha.
you could just sing it. It could just be you singing an a cappella.
I'm sure. I'm
Anyway,
sure. I'm
just a,
sure.
just an idea.
I love it. I love great ideas. And I love when we're having fun. And I can already feel like, we're going to have fun in this episode, Colin. Colin, just in a few words, can you introduce yourself to the world in case, I didn't really say it as I should?
No, you did a great job. Yeah. I mean, obviously, my name's Colin, and I'm basically a content creator influencer now that focuses on visual effects. And what I do, basically, what I tell people is that if you see those visual effects across the internet that are, mind blowing magic videos or crazy special effects, I will teach people how to do that with their phone. So I'll take certain effects and I'll basically show you how to use free apps and make those kind of effects with your phone for the most part. And so that's where I've really carved out a niche for myself.
And that sounds awesome. And you know why? Because this idea of just doing it on your phone with free apps, it just sounds, tangible. It sounds like I can do it. It sounds like you listening over there can do it. And I think that's where we're after those strategies, those techniques, those practices that we can implement easily and fast in our daily life and bring, those big results. That's what we're all after. And it seems like, Colin, you're the right person to deliver that. Now, can you once more tell us, just in a few words, a bit more about visual effects? Explain them to us. How do we, spot them in case that's not clear for those listening? And also, why are those something we want to incorporate in our content?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anytime you see any sort of special effects or editing tricks, I mean, anything can really be that's used in post-production with editing can be categorized as visual effects. So for example, a really common one would be if you see two of the same person, like if you saw me and then I'm talking to myself as a clone in one of my videos, that's a really common and pretty straightforward visual effect. So anything from that to, explosions or 3D animation, things like that. I mean, it can go from really simple to really complicated. And so what I do is I like to show people how to do really cool looking stuff that's relatively simple, but also visually stimulating, but then also to make it easy, because not everybody has a whole lot of time to like get After Effects and start downloading all these programs. And, we want it because content needs to come out, especially if you're like a business owner or you're a content creator, then you need to create stuff fast and efficiently.
The Code Tribe podcast is powered by Pensight. I want to take this opportunity to tell you more about Pensight and how much value it can provide you and your coaching business.
Pensight is an all-in-one platform for coaches and educators that enables you to quickly and easily build a highly credible page and sell your knowledge with one-to-one sessions, group coaching, courses, Q&As, digital products, and bundles. Payments, scheduling, video calling, client communications, and everything else is taken care of.
All it takes is 5 minutes to set up and it's free. It's the smartest way to kickstart your coaching business. Sign up to Pinsight today at pensight.com.
There was a second part to that question and I forgot what it was.
That's because I should break my questions into smaller pieces, but it was basically, why should we consider incorporating those effects into our content? What do we have to gain out of it? Why do coaches, creators, like, why should we consider that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So visual effects has been something that I'll just tell you how I got into it is maybe a good way to share the backstory. So 3 years ago, basically for the last 10 years, I wanted to be some sort of content creator. So I was trying YouTube out and I tried all these different vlogs and challenges and I was doing all sorts of stuff for, a number of years. And then when TikTok came out, I really felt a strong pull to create something to be able to become a TikTok influencer. So I was just doing trial and error. And I had a lot of editing experience, but I didn't actually have a lot of visual effects experience, meaning like any sort of magic trick editing or, special effects. What I did was I basically just kept creating. I just created something every day for 30 days. And what I noticed was that what I saw was really picking up on TikTok was that other people who were doing these magic sort of edits, like these visual tricks that you were like, how does somebody do that? Were they trying to think of an example of the one I saw? One of the first ones that I did was I jumped into the air and I disappeared and one of my hat fell and then out of the side, my hand reaches and grabs the falling hat and then I come into this from the side of the screen and then it just keeps looping like that. So that was one of the first like visual trick effects that I figured out. And what I noticed was that people were really interested in it and that sort of content took off. And as you've noticed, like with creators like Zach King and a lot of other, copycats of him, visual effects, it's so visually stimulating and it creates this emotion of curiosity. And I think that's the biggest piece is it creates this emotion of awe. The visual effect of it creates a shock or something in the viewer. I don't know the psychology behind it, but what the emotion is at the end of the day is like this awe that people see and they are like, oh, and it evokes an emotion in them, which creates them to want to share it, want to like it, comment, and hopefully more engagement if done right.
If done right. I think we got what we wanted out of your answer, Colin. And I think before we get into the nitty-gritty, because I will try to get some of those, tips and tricks from Colin on how can we do it ourselves. But before that, I just want to tell you one thing. Don't be afraid. Don't feel overwhelmed because, yes, indeed, they look incredibly hard to produce, or you have no clue how someone could create something. But I've had a look over the last few months into it, and I have to tell you, it's doable, it's possible. So before we get into it, I want you to just stick around because I feel like I'm sure that you can do it too, and it's not as hard as you think it is. Of course, it depends on what you want to create, but even some crazy effects you can do without knowing too much prior to this. So that was just my pep talk. Colin, am I right? Do I have to have years of experience? Can I just do it today?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the cool thing about it. And what I've sort of figured out as far as like being able to do things on your phone is that with apps such as CapCut, for example, it's a really powerful app that just knowing the right buttons to push, essentially, you can do some pretty powerful things that you can do in just a few minutes. So yeah, you're totally right. It's very doable. It just takes a little bit of like understanding and a couple of steps to figure out what you're doing. And then you can actually create some pretty like scroll stopping type of footage without a lot of time or effort.
I am so happy you mentioned this term scroll stopping because I feel like, a big benefit of visual effects is exactly this. It grabs your attention. It's something out different. It stands out because the world of content is so noisy right now. Everyone has put it out, so much content. It's saturated. And you have to, create something differently if you want to stand out. And I feel like visual effects is really the tool, the magic tool that can make a difference. And you are the wizard, Colin. You are the wizard of the day.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the reason to get into it is that there is so much stuff out there that's content is, everybody's just pumping out content. It's very saturated and we're inundated. So if you want to stand out and look different and have somebody stop and actually invoke an emotion, because I think my opinion, that's the most important piece of getting likes and shares and stuff, or at least capturing attention. Then doing something unique with visual effects is sort of a shortcut in order to get people to pay attention to like what you're saying or what your message is.
Gotcha. So my question for you, Colin, is before we get into the nitty gritty and the details and the how to go about visual effects, is have you spotted some mistakes that people do over and over again in the beginning when they get started? Maybe they run away because it doesn't work from the first video. What are some of these common mistakes that you see people doing?
I would say the first one is kind of something that you pointed to already, which is people will want to do it and have these big grand ambitions and then get overwhelmed because it's intimidating or complicating, trying to do something outrageous and give up. I think that's probably the number one mistake. And then from there, it's, another iteration of that is not starting out simple and thinking that you need to do something really crazy and complicated in order to capture attention, when really if you just clone yourself and do something creative with that, then that can be enough, which is a pretty simple thing to start with and do. And then I would say focusing, the number one mistake I probably see is that people focus too much on putting so much effort into a video and then putting it out thinking because they put so much effort into it, it's going to be amazing. And then it doesn't do well, rather than just sticking to the basics and sticking to consistent content, but also adding like simple VFX from there and then building up from that place.
I am so glad I asked you these questions before anything else, because I feel like now everything is cleared out. We know the pitfalls, we know how to not get into those. So now we're ready to execute, to go to do the right things. That being said,
Yeah.
Colin, what are the first things that we need to know? What are those principles, the fundamental things about visual effects, and what do we need to know today? Or if you wish, what are the things that we need to know today to get started? It can be apps, it can be tricks, it can be, I don't know, just the things to get started. What do we need to know? And it's enough for us that at the end of this episode we can get started.
Yeah, totally. So I would recommend, if you want to start with your phone, then I would say for everyone, get a free app like CapCut or something. And CapCut you can actually use on your desktop, and they make it pretty straightforward. And once you learn editing on one app, in my opinion, you can actually transfer those skills to other more complicated apps. So because I knew After Effects and I knew Premiere Pro and all these things, I was able to learn CapCut really quick, because everything, as long as you know where the certain things are, once you realize what the tools are, it's really easy to learn other apps. So I would start with your phone with a free app instead of going out and buying some complicated stuff, starting there. And then starting with just basic effects. So learning how to clone yourself, which is just using a mask. I could tell you all you have to do is put your phone on a tripod, get a shot of you standing right here on this side of the screen. I mean, it would be a bigger shot, of course. And then get another shot of you standing on this side of the screen. And then all you do is you put those two shots together and you draw a mask down the center of the screen. And then there you have two versions of yourself. So that I would start with things like that.
The thing is now that I know, even the term itself, visual effects, it's a bit harder to demonstrate that on a podcast, right? Because even when it comes to editing, you mentioned the word mask. I'm sure that most of the people listening might not know what the word mask is, which is actually, if I'm not wrong, an option into an editing app like CapCut, which allows you to sort of duplicate something. Colin, help me out. What does a mask do?
Yeah. It basically it basically cuts out. So if there's a mask that is a square, it would cut out a square out of and only show that where the square is located. And so because the two videos are placed on top of each other, then one video has one portion where the square is, and then the other video is playing in the rest of the area. I hope that makes
I'm
sense. It is kind of hard to explain.
I am loving the challenge, but for those listening, do not worry, because at the end of the episode we're going to send you in a place where you can see for yourself exactly what Colin is talking about, and all of these strategies, they're going to be shown to you. So don't worry, you're going to get it. That's why right now, rather than for us to be specific about how to edit, I would keep it about understanding the sort of why behind it. So, for example, Colin, when it comes to visual effects, you said that these effects make the reels more shareable, which obviously helps with the algorithm. But
Yeah.
is there any way that you use visual effects in a way to encourage your audience to spread the word or to share the reel? Like, are you strategic about this part of sharing a reel? Like, is there any trick you implement over there to make it more shareable?
As far as the using visual effects to make it more shareable, usually that's what your question is, right?
Sort of. It's a mix now that I'm thinking about.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would say that I usually make just something surprising. So a lot of times in my older content, what I would do is I would use a visual effect. I would have a story in mind, and then I would use a visual effect in order to capture the initial attention to let the viewer know like, hey, this is a video that you should pay attention to because I obviously put a lot of effort into it, and there's like some cool stuff happening. And so the visual effect would happen in the very beginning, and that would hook people in to be like, okay, I want to see where this is going. And usually it would be incorporated with the storyline.
I love that you said that. So you would use that, the visual effect, as a hook. Do you continue the reel with visual effects? Like, do you use visual effects throughout the reel, or use it just in the beginning or maybe at the end? Like, how do you go about it usually?
I mean, it totally depends on the type of video, but if the video is centered around visual effects, then obviously the visual effect will be the punchline, and I'll use it like for the climax or the centerpiece of the video. Or if it's more of like a story or visual effects is not the focus, then I use the visual effect a lot of times in the beginning to capture everyone's attention, and then usually leave people, or at least how I used to do this was leave people with like sort of another effect, like as a payoff in the end, if there wasn't, or maybe at the either the center or the end.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to people learning these things or coming up with ideas, what do you recommend? How can we learn more about it? Should we follow influencers like you who show us step by step how to do it? Or what's the easiest way for us to replicate?
The easiest way is to follow me, obviously. Just joking, kind of. But actually, CapCut, if you download CapCut, I think it's the best one, and that's why I chose it. They just put a lot of energy and money into their app to make it really accessible and really powerful. So I would start there, and then there's actually tutorials, and I'm one of the tutorial creators for the app. So there's me and a bunch of other creators that create tutorials on the app, and you can actually edit the video along with us while we're doing the tutorial. So you can click a button, and then you can actually use the footage from the video and actually edit along with us if you want to edit our video. So you don't even have to have shot it, practice, or you can just upload your own and then edit along with us. And I would say that's the easiest place to get started. And again, there's like really, really simple stuff on there that anyone can do within, like, you could do this within 10 minutes. You could be like, and just start with a transition. So like, let's say your audience or let's say you're a business owner and you want to get your content going, and you own like a clothing store or something. So you want to start out and you want to have your content stand out. Just go into CapCut, download or look up some tutorials, and use some sort of a really simple transition using a shirt. So like ripping your shirt off and revealing another shirt underneath or something along those lines. And then start practicing with that and start posting it. And then once you start posting it, messing around with different very simple effects, then seeing which ones work for people, or start seeing which ones your audience are responding to, and then start developing on those really simple effects. And then you can make them a little bit more complicated or putting more effort into those.
Two very important things that you mentioned. First of all, I'm happy you said, just put it out and see what your audience resonates with. Because, yes, these are visual effects, and we mentioned this idea of fast, but in the end, there's no magic trick, really. It's a process like any other, and it's all about that consistency, that iteration. So I think it would be nice to put out this disclaimer that this is anything else requires practice. So I'm sure you can see some quick results just by putting something out there today. But in the end, I think it's about, like growing with the practice and like seeing what works. So I just wanted to, put away this expectation of this will just blow up from the first video. And if not, then it's not for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And you don't have to be intimidated by, I know the word visual effects sounds like, I don't know, like I think of Marvel when I think of visual effects, like these crazy things. It's really just anything that is, I mean, I actually don't even know how to define it because but it's really, you can think of it as any sort of like editing trick that you're doing. So even a jump cut, I guess, could be a visual effect. So anything that's really simple. And these days, in the age of social media and content and short form video, using visual effects is sort of, it's going to become more and more important as content becomes more saturated and you want to stand out more and more. So, but again, like you said, you don't have to learn something crazy. I mean, just by doing, a simple, really, really simple visual effect, you're going to be ahead of a lot of people most other people in your niche, just by throwing that one simple transition in there that's going to make you stand out and that's going to have your audience resonate with your message.
Exactly. And I know I said it before, but I'll say it one more time. So if you go on Colin's Instagram, you're gonna see he has this less than even 60-second reels where he can literally show you in real time how he does it. So of course in the beginning it will not take you, a few minutes, it might take you half an hour, but imagine in half an hour or even less, you can have this crazy effect that can really, as Colin was saying, put you ahead of most of the creators out there, because this is still something untapped, not really explored, especially when you think about the big scale of creators out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely agreed. Yeah. It's very untapped as far as like most creators are not doing it. And the ones that are kind of blowing up is how I'm seeing it.
So this, I guess, is the magic formula. It's like the effect that this has on the audience, like this idea that it stops the scrolls. It's just very effective. And then put this together with the idea that it's doable. It can be simple and it doesn't have to be complicated. It's literally just you giving it a try. That's, again, my little pep talk. Now, Colin, some of us, we have maybe professional brands or more formal brands, if you wish, and we worry about visual effects feeling too gimmicky, if you wish. This
Mm.
does How can we strike a balance between creative effects and maintaining a professional and let's say authentic image on Instagram?
That's a really good question. I would say starting out with things, like I said before, starting out really simply. But I mean, because we consider anything that a creative edit as a visual effect at this point, starting with something that is visually appealing and not super gimmicky. So yeah, I think so. I would say for the most part, there you'll know instinctively whether it's gimmicky or not. And I think by starting with simple cut transitions, using visual effects can be thought of as like just creative editing. So even if you're taking your phone and you're talking to the camera, a visual effect could be considered stopping that every time you have something at every sentence and moving the background of your camera. So for the visual people who are watching this visually, so I'm looking at you straight on from the camera. Let's say I'm recording, I'm saying, I have my answer, which is I have one sentence. I'm like, hey, today we're going to talk about this. And then I would switch the backgrounds just by turning and then start talking again. So I would start with something. And so that just changes the background. And I mean, it's a stretch to call it a visual effect, but that's something very quick and very small that is a creative edit or more creative than just talking to the camera. So I would start with things like that and then build up from there. I think as your confidence grows and you'll find out what works for you and not wanting to seem too gimmicky. I don't know. That's the best answer I got right now for that.
I think that's good enough, and it's just something that I wanted to ask because yeah, I know I read about it in some comments, so I just thought it's interesting and bring it up. Now, Colin, obviously this is what you do day and night. I would assume visual effects, this reels, Instagram growth, because you do have an incredible audience of almost 130K followers. We're gonna come back to that in a second. But I wanted to ask, do you see
Mhm.
any trends in terms of visual effects? Maybe let's say this month, you saw something repeatedly, or like, are there trends, or is it just all over the place? Is that something that people just take and replicate? Maybe some transitions, maybe some visual effect that you see people doing again and again. Do you spot trends in this industry?
Yeah, I see just overall as a trend right now is the clothing and fashion industries are really taking visual effects. So I see a lot of fashion and clothing and sort of lifestyle influencers using visual effects. And they're basically, I mean, just doing visual effects transitions with clothing and creating a whole personal brand around those things. So some of the transitions are and the trend I've been seeing over the last few months is like cutout of a t-shirt flying onto the screen and sort of transitioning into the person wearing t-shirt or yeah. So I see a lot of those kind of transitions and being iterated on creatively. I would say that is probably the biggest trend I'm seeing right now as far as just the whole visual effects scene.
And have you seen other big creators in the space coming out? Like, do you see people gathering big followings in the last few months or maybe even 1 year? Like, are there more visual effect influencers coming out as we speak?
Definitely. Yeah. I see them. Yeah, they're popping up, and a lot of times I just see a lot will have start to grow a following, and then one video, one they'll do something creative, and then it'll just blow up their account, and they'll start, and then they'll iterate on that or sort of remix that style that blew them up, and they'll just keep growing. Another trend I see is somebody's hand. Somebody uses their hand behind a green screen to make it look like a large hand is coming on screen and picking them up and changing their outfit or something like that. Some pretty wild stuff. What's crazy is that it looks really cool and awesome, but is if you have a solid colored background like a green screen and a hand, which we all have, I think, then you can pretty much pull that off with like a CapCut editor or something like that. So it's a lot more doable than I think a lot of people realize.
I love that. It's a lot. Write that down. If you have a pen and a piece of paper, it's a lot more doable than people realize. And you can add, I can do
Yeah.
it. Just do it. But
Yeah.
coming back to what you
Yeah.
said,
Totally.
Colin, you were talking about these creators and how sometimes they have these videos that blow up. And then you said they stop and then they sort of replicate that or like work on it. And I wanted to bring this up because it's something that many people, especially in the beginning, they don't understand about content creation is that when something, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when something works, instead of like going with your schedule and posting the next reel and the next week of content like you planned, maybe it's worth to stop and like see why that specific reel worked and like do it again, replicate it. Is it the hook? Is it the content? Is it the topic? And I think I just wanted to highlight this point that look, even the biggest creators, if something works, you want to do it again. And I just wanted to put that
Yeah.
out there. Yep.
Absolutely.
And in terms of that, because you mentioned the word blow up, how was your growth journey, let's say on Instagram? Was it all thanks to visual effects? Did you get, let's say, 30K followers maybe just from one video? Was it, how to say, yeah, like how did you grow? Like, can you tell us more about that?
So I basically grew because I was originally at like 9,000 followers for a really long time. And then this is on Instagram at least. And so I couldn't really crack the code or like figure out how to grow more. And I was doing some visual effects videos, but like there was no like cohesiveness to what I was doing. There was no like nobody had reason to come follow me. And so what I figured out was that if I gave people a reason, if there was something that I was like solving for or something that I was giving an outcome to people. And so I realized what that was teaching people how to do it but on their phone, and that's when I sort of had a lot more cohesive brand, I would say, like personal brand. And that's when it just started flowing, is that when then videos would get views and then people would come back for more, and I had just a cohesive strategy. So then it grew, and then it just it's grown. It wasn't like one video that took it off. It's just been like a growth process ever since that. And I have noticed that anytime I talk about AI, that definitely spikes video. So AI is definitely hot. That's another trend to answer your question, is AI is, and I'm still like, I still don't even fully, there's so much that I don't understand about AI, but that is definitely a trend. And when I've touched on AI, a lot of times those videos have gone pretty viral.
What I love is that we're touching on this Instagram growth topics, which obviously you're very good at because you have the following that you have. And I'm happy we touched this as well. Now, about this trends, I know we were talking to one of our common friend, Dan Thomas. He also he's a virtual viral marketing expert. And he was saying that exactly this week, some of the biggest biggest trends that he was spotting, Colin, was this AI tools, then websites, because they give this idea of like a quick fix. Oh, I'm gonna save it and this will save me so much time, make money fast, and they
Yeah.
just work. And I think it's relevant to jump onto these trends. And that's why I was bringing this up, because somehow the algorithm prefers these topics because they know they drive engagement and saves. So it's also good to be aware of this when you create your content strategy, because if you put all of these elements together, I feel like that's where, that boom, that big growth, big jump can come from. So also be aware of trends is a good, I would say, lesson from this episode. And now to go
Yeah.
back to what you said, Colin, you said, before those your followers, before you experienced that, bigger growth after those 9K followers, you said that your content wasn't cohesive. How do I say that? Yeah. Um how would that how yeah, how did that look like? Like, why wasn't it? Is it because you weren't talking about the outcome, that like do it on your phone fast, or was it because you were posting about multiple topics? Like, why wasn't it cohesive?
I was basically creating where I just wanted whatever creative expression came to me, that I was going to make that, and that people were going to just watch and be entertained and follow it and love it, which that does work for some creators. I will say that they can just be creative. And I wanted to be one of those creators. And I was like, and what I realized was that it wasn't working, for one. And what I did was I looked at my old content, and I realized that my tutorials and behind the scenes stuff, that was getting more attention. And I had resisted for a very long time. I was like, I really don't want to do tutorials and how to's. It just seemed really intimidating. And I was like, I just want to be a free creative expression of myself, and everyone will just follow me because I'm so cool and creative. But that turned out not to be the case. And so I sort of faced reality and was like, okay, I clearly have been resisting this tutorials, but I'm happy enough doing it that I gave it a shot, and I started doing more tutorials behind the scenes, and then it started taking off, and lo and behold, I actually really love doing it now. And I just had a bunch of resistance around it. And so so to answer your question, that was where I didn't have a cohesive strategy. I was just like a creative whatever, like flowing in the wind. And this is where I actually, gave people a reason to follow me, because otherwise before they were like, okay, this guy does these random videos with special effects, but there's no reason for somebody to actually click the follow button. But now, because I actually have an outcome that I provide for people, they have a reason to follow me.
I love so much this insight, and I feel like many of us resonate. And I just want to say that, Colin, you're not the only one. I've had other big creators in the space who said that initially the thing that made them successful wasn't the thing that they really wanted or they were that good at, but they saw that gain traction, and they sort of, as you said, faced reality, gave it a go, and that was the key to success, that they now, like, they love creating. So for example, I think for Dan it was carousels, and in the beginning I don't think he was maybe the happiest about them, but then, like, he got good at it, he likes creating those. So I think it's just sometimes about, like, looking at what works and striking a balance between, what you love and what you think you should be doing to deliver those results. So I'm very happy you brought
Yeah.
this up.
Yeah, it's like the two circles. It's like what you want and what you're passionate about and what you're interested in. And then the other circle is like what the market wants and what people want and what your audience wants. And like, where do those two cross over? And so that's exactly where I landed. And what you're pointing at is like, I love doing visual effects and being creatives, and it crossed over with people want to know how to do it with me. And
I absolutely love that. Now, I'm aware that we're getting towards the end of the episode, as much as we would like to continue learning from you here. So I have, I would say, just two more questions left. First of all, at the end of this episode, can you come up for us with a, let's say, short little game plan on, how should we get started? Like, should we maybe invest 30 minutes a day? Is there some sort of plan that you recommend us sticking with, or like getting started with, in terms of like timeline and like specific steps on how to?
yeah, I mean, I would say, it depends on like what your content, like how much content you're putting out, and fitting that into your current content strategy. So I would start with, sticking to your current content strategy. If it's 3 videos a week or 5 videos a week or whatever, keeping that going and then adding in, I would say like one a week to start with, like adding one, because it's going to take you a little while to like, it's just going to take your brain learning a whole new way of thinking about things. And I would say start with cloning yourself or like some sort of really simple effect like that, or like a t-shirt clothing transition. And I would download CapCut and I would look up tutorials. I would just look up transitions or clone on the CapCut tutorial, or follow me and I'll have some stuff on there, or just look up CapCut transition tutorial, t-shirt transition tutorial, and start really simply with that and do it like maybe once a week, like, or once every 3 to 5 posts, or or even every 7 posts or something like that. And just see how you could start adding it in there and do it a few times. Like, don't do it. Yeah. Give it a few different times before you analyze it too much. And then look back and see how it responded, how your audience responded, and seeing if those got any uptick in views. Or yeah, I would just keep it really, really simple in the beginning, and you'll be surprised with probably how well it'll do, or how well you'll like it, or how easy it'll be. Or
I think this is doable. What do you think, dear listener? I think this is totally doable, and I'm so happy.
you can do it.
You told us this little game plan, because I feel like that's all we needed. This idea. Okay, one video per week, or like that's doable. Let's just get it, like give it a go. It's totally possible, and I think this idea of being possible, just yeah, it's a great incentive for us to act. Now, Colin, the last question, and a very important one. Why should people, reach out to you? Where can they find you? How can you help them, in case that
Mm.
was not clear enough?
Yeah. Hit me up on Instagram. I'm at Colin Pomeroy with 3 Ys. I'm sure you'll have like a link or something somewhere. And I'm also on TikTok, but it's harder to get a hold of me on TikTok. Same handle there. And what was the question? How I can help people?
Exactly. Why should people reach out to you, follow
Yeah.
you? How can you help?
Yeah, well, I basically do, my videos will have tutorials of how to do really cool stuff and simple stuff with your phone, how to create visual effects, how to create scroll stopping content with visual effects. And I also do regularly, I do these free workshops where I actually host sort of a live question and answer session, along with teaching like different parts of CapCut and different parts of video editing apps that you can use, and just making it as simple and as easy for you to understand as possible. So that's my whole goal, is to just take this, make it easy, make it doable, make it simple, and make it fast, so that you can create content that stands out, but that doesn't take a lot of time away from your life, and you don't have to learn any new complicated software or anything.
That sounds like a dream.
I'm
And
also on
Colin, do you
YouTube
have
as well.
also on YouTube? And do you have any
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
coaching program, or can people get one-on-one help somehow with you? Do you have a signature program?
I'm actually in the process of creating a signature program that's going to be probably like a 60-day or 8 week sort of done for you visual effects programs, where you start, day one is like the simplest, easiest possible effect you can do. And it's going to be the top like 30 most viral effects that are out there. And we're going to start with really, really easy stuff and build up from there, so that by the end, you'll have basically, I tell you exactly what to do step by step, what videos to make. And by the end of it, you'll have made all of these different videos that will get you to the place of having whatever it is, 10,000 followers. That's the goal in mind, because that's how I sort of, where it took me. And so basically it's a step-by-step program that you just implement, and then that it grows your following, because these are the most viral videos out there, or viral effects, I
Mm.
should say. So that's coming soon.
Yeah, anything else? Because it felt like that's coming soon.
No, 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 that was it. That's coming soon. It's just gonna be probably next month or something. So it's a work in progress.
I think I have a game plan for our listeners. If you got some sort of value out of today's episode, and I'm sure you did, since you are sticking till the end, I recommend this. You go follow Colin on Instagram. Again, Colin Pomeroy. You'll have a link below in the show notes. You maybe try some of his techniques, try to replicate some of the tips that he's giving in the reels. Then you show up to his workshops, when you can actually ask questions. And then, you can even sign up to his program, and you can learn all about visual effects, all about growing your audience with visual effects. So I think that sounds like a good game plan, Colin. Did I put it together right?
Sounds great. Yep, you summarized it well. Well done.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, what can I say? Thank you, dear audience, for sticking till the end. Thank you, Colin, for all of these insights today. Very, very valuable. It was honestly an honor to have you here with us today.
Oh, thank you.
Any last words you would like to share with the audience before we say bye bye / see you soon?
So I would definitely say that being okay with not it looking great in the beginning is perfectly fine. And I would also say that depending, I mean, unless you're like Nike or some really, really legit brand, being okay with posting something that doesn't look perfect, and you might be surprised at how people respond to it, because at least putting it out there, people will forgive you or forget about it, or might be actually impressed by it.
Exactly. It's just, this idea of put it out there, and it's better to just, this idea of movement. Like if you move, there is progress. If you stand still, then there is no progress. So the best thing you can do for yourself is just to put your first piece out there. Great tip, Colin.
I'll just say as a summary, don't be intimidated. You got this. And if you have any sort of curiosity or calling to create content that you want people to, stop scrolling and be interested in, then visual effects is a great way not only to capture attention, but to create an emotion. And I don't know if I explained this well earlier, but that's what really creates shares, follows, and like creates an emotional connection with your audience. So you got this. Start small, start easy, and we'll see you out there on the internet blowing up.
We'll see you out there on the internet blowing up. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, dear audience. And see you all for the next episode of the Coach Tribe podcast. See ya. Hope you enjoyed this episode.
We'll be releasing every Wednesday, so make sure to
subscribe
and rate us 5 stars where you're listening to this show to give others a chance to discover it too.